House Democrats filing articles of impeachment, or I should say one article of impeachment against President Trump. They are charging the president with inciting an insurrection. A vote could come this week, perhaps as soon as Wednesday. Now, of course, there are just 9 days left in the Trump presidency, and congressional Democrats are now back to their top priority. It's not you. It's not pandemic relief or those $2,000 checks they promised us. It's not social justice or even the Green New Deal. And even though they are about to occupy the White House, control the Senate and the House for the first time since 2009, their top priority in 2021 is the exact same thing it was back in November of 2016 when they didn't have that power. Impeachment. Impeachment and humiliation of President Trump. This has always been the ultimate objective. And now the temptation of a show impeachment trial is proving too great even for a few Republicans. So why do this? Why, with even a little more than a week left, why impeach? Well, the best answer seems to be we have to do something. But instead of offering a cogent legal explanation as for why, they offer only personal attacks.
Well, sadly, the person who's running the executive branch is a deranged, unhinged, dangerous president of the United States. And only a number of days until we can be protected from him. But he has done something so serious that there should be prosecution against him.
That's basically the Congress's answer for everything. Wait until a crisis happens, blame the other side with personal attacks, and then do something. It is a definition of demagoguery. That's how they sneak trillion-dollar, 900-page spending bills past us in the middle of the night. And what Nancy Pelosi and Democrats are really telling us with their second impeachment of Donald Trump is that congressional Democrats don't trust the results of the election either. The votes have already been cast. Remember, they say that America has had enough of Donald Trump and that he lost.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Joseph R. Biden, Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes.
That's it. That's the record. That's what happened. Still, that's not enough for Nancy Pelosi. She wants to rush through with these impeachment proceedings, again, with no real table for the public to play a role here. But please don't get distracted. There's going to be a lot of sanctimony from the big media and the Democratic Party in the coming days and the Lincoln Project crowd. Don't pay attention to it. Don't let that defeat you. They want you to tune out and drop off. They want you to leave the public square to the adults. If they really wanted unity, and if they wanted you to listen, they might be wise to start their essays and commentaries this week with praise for Senator Tom Cotton. His principled and, in hindsight, correct position on the congressional election challenge proved the right one. They should do that instead of attacking and celebrating the deplatforming of guys like Senator Josh Hawley and President Trump. Senator Cotton deserves praise from all of us because he did something that's not popular in Washington or with the base of the Republican Party. He was honest with all of us about the limitations of his own power and thus the power of the U.S. Senate. Cotton told the Senate and us, specifically the vice president, could not change the outcome of the election, nor could the Senate. And if they did, that would set a dangerous precedent. And based on the historical record that we showed you again, Cotton was right. Perhaps if Senators Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley had sided with Cotton, none of this would have happened. But that's just speculation on our end. Now, we don't like to talk about speculation. We like to focus on facts and what we do know. Senator Josh Hawley is now paying a steep price for his support of the congressional election challenge. I'm not saying he should or that it's fair, but it's happening nonetheless. Hawley's forthcoming book, The Tyranny of Big Tech, has been scrapped by the publisher Simon & Schuster. A recent opinion piece in Politico called out the publisher for a, quote, self-defeating move. The author added, canceling the senator's book is not principled or courageous. It's just lame. And that's true. But it's also fair to say, and it's true, that the First Amendment does not exist to protect a sitting U.S. senator from a private publishing company's lame and self-defeating decisions. The First Amendment exists to protect us, private citizens and companies, from the government, not the other way around. Now, it's hard to say how badly the riot at the Capitol following his support of the election challenge has damaged Hawley long term. America loves a comeback story. I'm sure he has a lot of support still, but he's going to have to find some new sources of money. The Kansas City Star reports that the former U.S. ambassador and Missouri businessman Sam Fox is disavowing the Republican senator, calling his previous support of Hawley, and it was a lot of support in terms of money, a mistake. Fox also accused Hawley of engaging in, quote, an act of reckless pandering. Now, Senator Hawley, one of the conservatives who actually seem to have a grasp and understanding of the danger that big tech has for all of us, his voice is now diminished through a loss of support from his biggest donor and the blackballing of his book. There's also a lot of other conservatives who have lost Twitter followers or been deplatformed, including the president. And again, we're not saying this is right or fair, but it is in fact happening. Now, we share your concerns about Mark Zuckerberg and Jack and Sundar Pichai and the rest of the big tech oligarchs. But the fact is Congress allows them to take advantage of protection provided by a law known as Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996. Congress looks complicit with their obvious bias when it comes to which information they limit and which information they promote. Despite the fact that that law is on the books, they don't enforce the law. Now, the big social media companies let the Chinese Communist Party brag about ethnic cleansing in Western China while shutting down the President of the United States, who in fact told the crowd in Washington to, quote, peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Now, it's obvious that Section 230, passed in 1996, like a lot of the politicians in Washington, is well past its expiration date. And that's why we should make sure we focus our attention on picking better people to enforce and defend the laws that we have on the books. Or even better, vote for people who are going to repeal laws that the government isn't going to enforce in the first place. People who are honest with us about the limits of their own power and the extent of yours as a law-abiding citizen of the United States. And we'd say that's people like Senator Tom Cotton. Now, for more on this and the Democrats' push for impeachment, let's welcome in Newsmax White House correspondent John Gizzi for the latest on that front. John, great to see you. And so where do we think this is going to go, John?
You say they are, well, at this point, the idea of invoking the 25th Amendment to the Constitution is out of the question almost. Most people who looked at it saw it as a trial balloon being floated by Democrats, and that was created in 1967 on the basis if the president's mental or physical health failed, the vice president could step in as an acting president. That would require more than half the cabinet supporting him, and neither Vice President Pence nor the cabinet were willing to do it. So impeachment is the next step that is almost upon Congress at this point. At this point, there are 210 sponsors for an impeachment resolution that was described by Speaker Pelosi. Some Republicans have also voiced their support for impeaching President Trump. And in all likelihood, another impeachment motion will pass by Wednesday. That leaves a grand total of 6 days for a Senate trial such as that President Trump experienced earlier. Whether it will result in his removal from office, hard to say. Some Republicans, such as Senator Toomey of Pennsylvania, say yes, he deserves impeachment, but will 2/3 of the Senate plus one vote to remove a president with days left of his tenure? It seems highly unlikely at this point. John?
John, what about, kind of the procedural process here? Who right now is in control of the agenda on the Senate floor?
Well, on the agenda on the Senate floor, it is still in the hands of Mitch McConnell. Chuck Schumer has not yet become the majority leader because there's not yet been a vote to organize that it would include the two new Democratic senators from Georgia. So one could say it is up in the air, but Republicans are still clinging to the control. That, of course, won't last for a while. I might add that we're going to have some cliff-hanging votes to cover in the year ahead. The Senate is now divided 50-50 between the parties, with Kamala Harris as vice president there to cast the tie-breaking vote. In addition, Democrats are expected to control all of the major committees. Pat Leahy of Vermont, the senior Democratic senator who came here in 1974, will chair the all-powerful Appropriations Committee. And one can see a lot of other familiar figures, such as Bernie Sanders, wielding key gavels.
Yeah, we'll have to talk more about those committee assignments coming up and what they mean, John, but also very telling there at the same time. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon. All right, joining us now is the host of Greg Kelly Reports right here on Newsmax TV, Greg Kelly. Greg, great to have you with us.
John, thank you. By the way, I've been listening to the show. Your opening statement was brilliant, moving, and sums up where the country is right now, particularly about how the the irresistible allure of a show trial in the House.
It's hard to
Amazing,
imagine, Greg, if we went back and looked at the calendar and we X'd out the days from the last 4 years that didn't involve a House concerted effort to impeach the president, we'd be left with a handful of days, and that's it. You know, so many things are important right now to the country that are not important, apparently, to Congress, including these $2,000 checks. And I worry specifically about the people in Georgia, my home state, that were promised these $2,000 checks by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They are clinging to a lifeline. They don't have money. They don't have jobs. And this is why they voted on those Democratic senators. And now they're left another 9 days, you know, blowing in the wind while Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats want to push this show trial.
And this is where Joe Biden could be of value if he were going to live up to his promise that he's the unifier and everything would get back to normal. I don't think he was being sincere when he said that. Look, there's one portion of this, though, I want to point out that, you know, they're trying to cancel President Trump. They're obviously trying to cancel Senator Hawley, Senator Cruz. I don't think they'll be successful. The Democrats, the left, big tech, they're all overplaying their hands. You know, we here on Newsmax and throughout the media world condemned the violence as it was happening on Wednesday. However, I will say that Senators Hawley and Cruz and their colleagues had a valid argument to make.
Right.
It was well within the law, and I applaud them for doing what they did. And unfortunately, one of the many reasons why the violence was so awful, the injury, the damage, the loss of life to Officer Sicknick and that young woman from San Diego, that they intimidated some of the lawmakers from doing what they were planning on doing. It's kind of interesting when you look at it that way, that, you know, it's, Kelly Loeffler, senator, I understand, but she was spooked.
Right.
She was spooked by the violence.
It's a classic bait and switch scenario where, you know, you're promised one thing and you get something else. I think Kelly Loeffler, you know, specifically, she did not believe in this, obviously, Greg, and she was, you know, bullied into doing it. We need people that are going to adhere to their convictions, you know, which side they believe on. You're right. There is a legitimate reason to have this. And the bottom line is, and I think we lose this in most of it, is a lot of people in this country feel like their voices aren't being heard and they're not getting a return on their tax dollar investment. And that's why this angst, this animosity, this tension exists.
I can't get into the head.
Is, you know, the demagoguery that we've seen. You know, people called Tom Cotton a traitor for taking this position, for just being honest with his constituents, saying, look, I don't think we have the ability to do this, and if we did, it would be dangerous, and I'll tell you why. He was called a traitor for doing that. We can't be like the other side, where there is no room for differing opinions, and when it's just because you don't agree with somebody, you're going to call them a traitor and say they should be hung. I mean, we can't be that party.
I agree. I don't think we should be that society. By the way, I happen to disagree with Senator Cotton, and I marveled at the time. He went to Harvard. I didn't. But reasonable people can disagree about how to read the 12th Amendment and Article 2. It happens every day at the Supreme Court, and some of the smartest people in the universe can disagree on the same document, what it means, 5-4 decisions. I've always been fascinated by that. So, but yeah, the language is obviously ridiculous, sad. Too often, though, it's sanctioned when used by one side. It's okay for the left to call the right anything they want, and not the other way around. I do wish that the temperature would be dialed back. And I do want to say this real quick, John. Sure. Nothing the president did last week could in any way be construed as inciting a riot. That was a standard Trump speech. We've seen hundreds of them.
You and I, Greg, have a little more tolerance for this because we actually take the time to read the words of the speech and the transcripts and, you know, go back and wait a minute. What he said here, and I found this in the New York Times today, peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. That does not mean breaking into the Capitol. Any sane person knows that. Those are the words from the president himself. Peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. That doesn't mean barging into House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. We know that. 99.9% of the American population knows that. Some people didn't get the message, and that's unfortunate. Greg, real quickly as we run here, we know the knives are out. They're coming for revenge. That includes the New York Bar Association saying they're going to try to remove Rudy Giuliani. That coming out today here. What's your reaction to some of these, you know, Forbes magazine saying they're going to come out against anybody or not hire anybody? I mean, it's going to be a long period of vengeance here. But I want to get your specific reaction to what the New York Bar Association is trying to do to Rudy Giuliani now.
Well, overall, I think they are overplaying their hand. This is an overreaction on their part. Rudy Giuliani was on my show last week, and I asked him about his comments, which are puzzling, to wage combat. That was a peculiar thing to say in that setting. And I'm not sure on the specifics, the legality of that statement. I like Rudy. I know Rudy. I don't believe that he meant any harm by those comments. You know, the Bar Association making a statement like that is, a lot of people are weighing in. They're just moved by the political moment. Mm-hmm. And I think, this is a political storm, and that's about to calm down. I feel that way. So,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think, hopefully we'll get back to the business of the American people and get past this. And if Democrats will let it end, it needs to end now. 9 days to go. Greg, thanks so much. We appreciate it. We'll see you tonight at 7 p.m. Looking forward to it as
John,
always.
Many thanks.
All right. On January 1st, Secretary Mike Pompeo promised to give the American people the full story of our American foreign policy over the Trump administration the last 4 years. But what can we expect that to look like over the next 4 years? We're going to talk about what Secretary Pompeo is up to in these last few days of the Trump administration. Pentagon advisor and Army veteran Corey Mills will join us next.
This is also an opportunity for them to now go and put pressure on social media companies to literally not just erase the president, erase everybody. We're now living in a country where 4 or 5 companies, unelected, unaccountable, have the power, a monopoly power to decide we're going to wipe people out.
That's Florida Senator Marco Rubio calling out big tech's monopoly power and their move to censor conservatives on their platforms. The senator saying big tech companies are censoring the right to make nice with Democrats who are just about to take over control of the White House, Senate, and the House of Representatives. Now, the president has been banned from Twitter in the wake of Wednesday's Capitol riot. The president has also been blocked from posting on Facebook and Instagram until the end of his term. This move is once again putting a major spotlight on this law called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. So who is really to blame here? Big tech for censoring their users, or for the government for not really enforcing this law? Let's welcome in now writer at the Post Millennial, Ari Hoffman, and also radio host Dan O'Donnell. Gentlemen, great to see you both.
You too. How you doing?
Now, we've had this debate many days about the importance of Section 230, the unwillingness of members of Congress to really hold the government's feet to the fire, to get them to enforce this law, to swear and uphold the Constitution, all these laws that we have on the books here. But Ari, I know you, like me, like Dan, we all lost a lot of followers, but we still have platforms. You still have the Post Millennial. Dan has his radio show. I have these couple hours here on Newsmax TV. Are those things at risk now as a result of what we've seen these tech oligarchs do? Ari, first to you.
I think the biggest risk is what we saw happen to Parler, because what happened was they said, OK, we can't get rid of the site, so we're going to deplatform it from the App Store, and we're also going to get rid of their servers. Now, that could happen to any conservative media outlet, and then other servers will be too afraid to pick it up, which is why Parler is still offline as of this morning. I do find it entertaining that this whole summer we were told we couldn't do anything as business owners, and now these guys, the tech companies, are being told they can do whatever they want.
Law, probably, 50 times. And there are lots of kind of caveats to it. But basically what it says is we're not going to, hold big tech accountable for things that people do on their platforms. Now, if they start to censor things, then they become a publisher. And then therefore they are responsible for curating the things that are on their site. So things like child porn or things that are illegal, they could still be held responsible for those. So my issue here is that, you have the Ayatollah's Twitter handle going wild. You have the Chinese Communist Party bragging about ethnic cleansing in Uyghur China. That stuff is not cracked down, but they cracked down on the president, who is at the same time calling for a peaceful and patriotic way for these folks' voices to be heard. So there is a double standard here. But who are you more angry at, Dan? The politicians and the people in Congress who don't really, have these laws enforced, don't stand behind these laws that are on the books, and don't repeal these laws, or the actual companies that they allow to do this?
Well, what I've been saying for a couple of days now, John, is that it's ironic that we finally found evidence of collusion. Only it's not between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. It's between big tech companies illegally colluding with one another in order to get rid of a competitor that would be Parler and engage in viewpoint discrimination, which under Section 230 of the 96 Communications Decency Act is prohibited for content platforms. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the ultimate wrong here is for companies that view themselves as the ultimate arbiters of what isn't and is allowable discourse. So government does have an advisory role, but
here, and we do have this law. I mean, you know, it's a 1996 law. Or, you know, I have to wonder, it's like trying to use a computer from 1996 to fight back against all this modern tech.
None of these platforms existed in 1996 for the most part. And if you look at this, what's even worse about this whole thing is that they are trying to silence all this free speech, and yet now it is hitting them in their pocketbooks. You see that the stock market, their stock prices are not reacting well to this. So perhaps the chickens are coming home to roost early with regards to all this. And you look at what's going on with them and how people on the left are even looking at this. The ACLU is looking at this and saying this is too far, this is too much, because they know that the pendulum swings in both directions. And one day when Republicans are back in power, they could come after the tech companies. And this is really just a preemptive move because they know that the Democrats being in power are going to make.
This is the free market at work here. Twitter's shares tumbling 7.5% at 8:07 this morning. That's how far down they were. I haven't had a chance to check them recently. But there are consequences for these decisions, and the free market making that obvious right now. Dan, Ari, great to see you both. We'll check back in with you guys in the next hour. Still plenty more to talk about on this front. We thank you for your time. We're going to talk about former Republican governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, comparing the Capitol Hill mob to the attacks of Nazi Germany. Also coming up, a former U.S. Secretary of State now claims that he wants nothing to do with the GOP. But hasn't he said that before? We'll tell you who that is. Now disavowing the party again.
Pelosi was pretty definitive yesterday during her 60 Minutes interview on her plans to introduce impeachment should Vice President Mike Pence not invoke the 25th Amendment to remove the president from office. And it's pretty clear that the vice president is not on board with that. So now we're getting our first look at these new articles of impeachment, and they're accusing the president of inciting an insurrection last Wednesday when there was the protest at the Capitol. Now, specifically on page 3 of these articles, it says that, quote, he also willfully made statements that in context encouraged and foreseeably resulted in lawless action at the Capitol. Now, the president's supporters are suggesting that this is an easily defensible claim in that the president was very clear that these protests should be peaceful. In fact, we'll take exactly what the president said during his address to rally goers on Wednesday just before they arrived at the Capitol. Listen.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity.
So the president is saying peacefully there and patriotically make their voices heard. He also said we'll see if Republicans stand strong. The question is, how strong are Republicans standing behind the president in this new effort for impeachment? I got to talk to a couple of House members in the last hour as we were getting more news on this, and they felt like Republicans in the House are not being aggressive enough just yet to address this. There is a call amongst House Republicans that will take place later this afternoon, and perhaps we'll see some more cohesive messaging from that. But let's look at what Nancy Pelosi is thinking in regards to the 25th Amendment and impeachment claims. Now looking more towards impeachment, it's really about the future of the president in politics. Listen.
And he could run again for president.
And that's one of the motivations that people have for advocating for impeachment.
So Pelosi making clear what the motivation is behind this latest effort. Sean, Emma.
We still continue to question that. I know you're following the latest development again, that just coming in there. Still a lot to play out. It's got to pass in the House. You would obviously need 2/3 majority in the Senate. We've seen this play out before. What it would be the purpose with the president leaving office next week on Wednesday. Live pictures here, I believe, in the House now as we look on here, just coming in with their articles of impeachment as we have our cameras in there as we were watching now. Okay, here it begins. It's deja vu. This is something, Emerald, we covered not too long ago. And you're seeing this happening 9 days before the inauguration.
And the timeline is in question, right? There's been a lot of constitutional debate on the Constitution this morning amongst constitutional scholars. We had some on Wake Up America this morning. And even Pat Toomey, the senator, is asking, it's not real clear in the Constitution about impeaching a president as he's leaving office and then after he's out of office and how binding it really is. So those are debates that are going to happen this week.
All right, I'll jump off of this one here. We'll continue to follow it. Their cameras are inside there. Newsmax White House correspondent Emerald Robinson joining us live. Emerald, thank you very much.
Was a Democrat. Gavin Newsom is a Democrat. Almost all the politicians in the San Francisco Bay Area. San Francisco is my hometown. I know it well. But almost all the politicians there are Democrats. You do have a Maryland governor who's a Republican who's putting ridiculous restrictions on people.
No,
I agree with Victoria.
I know.
Overwhelmingly, it's Democrats. And I think it shows a desire, particularly among Democrat politicians, but among left-wing politicians in America. They want to diminish your freedom. They want to use government to control